Hey everyone, Kevin here with a Wine 3 short video on important components of wine and how we measure them and how to convert between units. So let's get going. Here are some of the things we test in wine. You can stop, look at this list. Part of the problem is we use different units for measuring different components. Titratable acidity we usually express in grams per liter. Same with residual sugar, but harvest sugar we express in Brix. Sulfites we use parts per million typically. Alcohol we do a volume to volume percentage. So all these differences, how do we convert between them and understand some of them? The first thing that's important is to think about the prefixes that are used in wine. So the important ones here to know are kilo and milli. Those are the most important ones. And both are a factor of 1,000. Kilo is 1,000 times something. So a kilogram is 1,000 grams. If you're going to convert between grams and kilograms, here's the conversion factor. 1,000 grams equals 1 kilogram. Milligrams, on the other hand, are 1/1000th. A milligram is 1/1000th of a gram. So, likewise with liters, a milliliter is 1/1000th of a liter. So here's some conversion factors for grams to milligrams or liters to milliliters, if I pronounce that correctly. All right, so no kilo, no milli. Those are the most important. But be sure you don't mess them up. Don't confuse 1,000 times with 1/1000th. And I think it's really tempting to just move decimal points when you're converting between grams and milligrams. But what I recommend is using the conversion factors and canceling units like we talked about in class, because if you move the decimal point in the wrong direction or don't move it the right number of decimal points, you can be off by a factor of 10. And if you add 10 times too much acid to a 10,000 gallon tank, or 10 times too much SO2, a winemaker will be very unhappy. So we'll look at using some of those conversion factors. So let's look at this list of items that we find in wine. The next slide has the units, the percentages we use, and an example or examples in the last two columns that I think are really important to know. So let's go through these one at a time. pH. pH is a little easy. It's unitless. We don't have to worry about grams per liter. pH is a measure of the acidic protons that have been released into a wine. We'll talk about that more when we talk about acid. But an example is 3.4. And the range in wine tends to be about 3 to 4. All right, so you can expect that if you're within the range 3 to 4, you're probably in a good range. Red wines tend to be higher, white wines lower. We've talked about that separately. TA, or titratable acidity, we usually report in grams per 100 mils or grams per liter. So that's a little tricky. So you either have units of 1 liter, which equals 1,000 milliliters, or you have units of 100 milliliters. And in each case, it's grams per liter or grams per 100 mils. So 100 mils is 1/10 of a liter. Oops, extra T there. 1/10 of a liter. So if these two ratios are the same, these are both measures of acid. So if we're measuring, say, 6 grams of acid per 1,000 milliliters, that equals 0.6 grams per 100 milliliters. In other words, the numerator is 1/10 in the fraction on the right, it's 1/10 of the fraction on the left. The denominator is also 1/10 of the fraction on the left. So be comfortable with that, because it's important to do those conversions. Here's one of the reasons it's important. We often express titratable acidity as a percentage. So you'll see on a wine data sheet, say, our expression of titratable acidity is 0.65%. People often confuse what that means in grams per liter, or they get confused about what that percentage means in grams per liter. And the easiest way I find to get this right is to know that a percentage is just a fraction with 100 in the denominator. All right? So a percentage is a fraction with 100 in the denominator. And that's really important. I mean, the whole thing is important, not just the denominator. All right? So if you have 0.65%, if this is a fraction with 100 in the denominator, what this is 0.65 divided by 100. That's 0.65%. Because we express TA as grams per volume, this would be 0.65 grams per 100 milliliters. All right? And this is a weight to volume measure. Grams express the weight, and milliliters is a volume. So this is a weight to volume percentage. But an easy way to go from 0.65% to the amount of grams in the wine is just to know that 0.65% is a ratio, is a fraction with 100 in the denominator. And then the actual percentage, in this case 0.65, is the numerator, 0.65. All right? What if we happen to be a winemaker who expresses acidity in grams per 1,000 mils instead of 100 mils? Well, then we can just multiply by 10 over 10. And that means we have 6.5 grams per 1,000 milliliters, or 1 liter, which equals 1 liter. All right? So 10 over 10, that just equals 1. So we can multiply a fraction by 1, that's just itself. So we can multiply by 10 over 10, and that gives us a fraction that has the same value in the second case as the first case. So this fraction, number 1, is the same value as this fraction, number 2. We've just multiplied the numerator and the denominator by 10. Excuse me. So that's an easy way to make that conversion. Multiply by 10 over 10. Okay? So be comfortable with that. Be comfortable with how to convert percentages to grams per 100 mils, and then multiply by 10 over 10 to get it to grams per 1,000 mils. All right. Next, let's talk about sugar. Harvest sugar and residual sugar have different measurements typically. We express harvest sugar in degrees Brix. That's a weight over weight measure. It is just grams of soluble solids, shown over here on the right, grams of soluble solids per 1,000 grams of juice. And that would be, a typical percentage would be 24%, weight to weight. So let's do that, 24%. We know that the percentage is just a fraction with 100 in the denominator. So it would be 24 divided by 100. Right? If 100 is in the denominator here, then we know our numerator is just equal to our percentage, 24. All right? In this case, it's a weight-to-weight measurement, so the numerator is going to be grams and the denominator is going to be grams. What if we want to express that per 1,000 grams? Well, we do the same thing we did in the last slide, multiply by 10 over 10. That makes the numerator 240 grams, and the denominator 1,000 grams. All right, so fraction number 1, fraction number 2 are the same value. We've just multiplied by 10 over 10. Okay, so that's degrees Brix. Residual sugar, we express that in grams per 100 mils or grams per liter, just like titratable acidity. It's a weight to volume measure like titratable acidity. Here's an example, 0.15%. So 0.15% residual sugar. And residual sugar is the little bit of sugar left in the wine after the yeast have finished fermenting. Or it's probably more accurately, it's the sugar that the winemaker chooses to leave in the wine when the wine is sold, when the wine is bottled. So the winemaker could leave a little extra sugar or even add some concentrate to add some sweetness to a wine. But however we get at the final sugar in the wine at bottling, we usually express it in a weight to volume percent, like 0.15%, which we know now equals 0.15 divided by 100, right? Percentage is just a fraction with 100 in the denominator. And we know this is a weight to volume, so this is going to be grams per 100 mils. So it's 0.15 grams per 100 mils. If we want to express that as grams per liter, maybe we're a young winemaker and we're more used to expressing as grams per liter, we multiply by 10 over 10. And so we have 1.5 grams per 1,000 mils, which of course equals 1 liter. All right. Sulfites, we express in parts per million. So parts per million, we abbreviate ppm. And parts per million are just milligrams per liter. All right, so there's that prefix, milli, that I said we wanted to know. And a milligram, 1 milligram, equals 1/1000th of a gram. So 1,000 milligrams equals 1 gram. So if we have 30 parts per million, that just equals 30 milligrams per liter. So this is a weight to volume, but because it's fairly small, 30 milligrams in a liter, that's not very much. We often use the expression parts per million instead. Okay? So if a winemaker said, add sulfites at a rate of 30 milligrams per liter, that would be the same thing as saying, add sulfites at a rate of 30 parts per million. All right? So parts per million is a fraction with milligrams in the numerator, liters in the denominator. Finally, alcohol, we do that as a volume to volume measurement, and that just means the percent alcohol in some volume of wine. So 14%, we know that that would be 14 divided by 100 because a percentage is just a fraction with 100 in the denominator. In this case, it's volume to volume, so we know this would be milliliters divided by milliliters, volume to volume. Or it's also 140 milliliters per 1,000 mils, or 1 liter, if we multiply by 10 over 10, just like we did before. Okay? So it's volume to volume, milliliters volume. So it's volume to volume percentage. All right? There's some help with percentages if you want to watch this YouTube video. That can give you some help. And there's also my video on calculating additions to wine, and you can check that out. The link is on Canvas. So thanks for watching, everybody. I hope this was helpful. I'll see you soon.